how much, though, that the government actually spends subsidising the mining industry. So they'll discover there's a mineral in a particular place, and the government will build all of the infrastructure for that town. So the mining company can just come in and make all the money. But I think so. If you look at it like, well, the government could invest money in setting up a grid, like you're talking about, and working out how to, get the energy to the houses. I think we have to look at it like that, because I think there's a lot of money being spent to, exactly to help, to subsidise and help a few mining magnates become richer. So
it's interesting, because they would say that the government isn't spending enough money and that's why the fly in fly out thing's becoming so extreme. There's no infrastructure into these towns apart from what the mining companies put into it. So they're actually saying, well, unless the government comes to the party. So yeah, it's interesting that just from what we've seen being involved in the resource sector, that they're screaming the other way, saying, well, we need more help to put in these, to make people this a viable community. The fly in fly out thing is getting to be enormous. In some mines, they're looking at 100% of their workforce, which has a big impact on the local community.
Yeah. And how do the workers feel? Because I think it's quite difficult, isn't it? Like just in terms of the long hours and the days and all that stuff, being away from your family.
Definitely.
Incredibly difficult.
Definitely. And there's definitely seeing the incidence of depression and even suicides on these sites to be quite high. And it's not reported, for obvious reasons. But it definitely is that separation, and they're getting the stress of the family at home saying, I can't go, and they're 4,000 kilometres away and they can't do anything. So that hopelessness is quite hard.
Yeah. I suppose there's that question, like with unions, of a union, like say CFMU, that their workers are doing very well generally, and you can see in the long term it will be good for your workers and good for your community to move to different jobs and different energy sources. But if it's so good now, like how do you move away from that? How do you convince your members that, or how do you work? At the end of the day, if it's so good now, don't change it.
I think you're right, and I mean a lot of unions actually have a policy of no uranium mining and no nuclear energy and all that kind of stuff, and good policies on climate change. But there's one union in particular, the Australian Workers Union. I don't know if you guys have seen Paul Howes, the secretary in the media. He gets in the media quite a bit, but he's very pro-uranium and pro-nuclear and all that kind of thing because of that very reason. He's going, well, our members, want these jobs, and it means more jobs for our members and that kind of thing. But so I agree. I think it's totally short-sighted. But I also think there's a role that union leadership needs to play. Yes, I can see that some members will go, well, no, I'm earning the best money I've earned my whole life or whatever. But I think it's that leadership. The leaders have to take the leadership role and educate, members and kind of take a leading role, in promoting green energy jobs. And I think, that transition has to start now, and it can work. I think all these sort of skills that that people in the manufacturing or mining sector have could be totally applicable to renewable energy. We still need to make wind, windmills, and we still need to, all these kind of things. Solar panels make solar panels. So I think it's not about putting people out of a job. It's about just a transition, and I really think that the union movement could be probably taking a stronger leading role in that.
Right. The work centre communities could also. So I think that's point of this idea is do communities get asked or engaged in these conversations?
Well, you were talking about that before, weren't you? About
I was just thinking of, say, Tassie, with the logging industry there. And underwent a change, and the community there were just were devastated because they were losing their livelihoods. But it was a necessary change, unfortunately. But and I think yes, sort of things have to happen. But it's only short term, hopefully. Yeah, and that's the thing, is convince those people that it's for the better good of everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in terms of working with some remote Indigenous communities, if they're being wooed by the mining companies, they're really happy to take the bugs. Some of them, others a bit more. Okay, give me a rewind. I saw this doco. The footage was from a community in North Queensland, I think, or somewhere around there. And it was about asking the mining company not to come into the community, to not bring alcohol with them or anything like that, because the elders at that point in time were totally against mining, because they saw huge and damaging results that would happen as a result of the mining company coming in. The dollars was good, but for the future of their people, they said it was no good. They didn't want them there. But the government and the mining company didn't listen to them and just rode roughshod over them. And so as a result, their sort of prophecy came true. And yeah. And yeah, I kind of feel so many things happening up and down Western Australia. And that gas hub that's caused a bit of friction in Broome area. Taking the sort of divided the community for those that want the big bucks straight away, and those who very much like this, as in this old documentary, saw how detrimental it can be to the area and the community.
This is the working town. Even if you're working it, you still, our economy is based on these resources, and I can do what I want to do, but at the end of the day, I'm still part of that economy.
And they're driving up the prices of restaurant meals, of accommodation, so to just rent a house now. So that's where you really have this separation of people who can afford it, even unskilled people who go up and drive a truck earning six-figure salaries. So and you have a waiter in Perth who's earning far less. They're both competing for the same housing, and that's causing some real problems. And I think like these local communities, it's spilling out. They'll go and express their frustration of being away from their families. They'll drink a bit too much. It's creating a lot of social problems in the towns as well. So that's forming a real impact.
But we're all kind of totally agree with what you said, but I was kind of more acknowledging my responsibility for the good and the bad of mining, even though I don't work in that sector, because all the money goes into my work and people I work with, and our lifestyle is channeled through that. So, but hypothetically, it could be many different things, but the way things stand, we're all benefiting or not. We're all involved in it.
Well, that's that point about benefiting or not. I mean, there's a real two-speed economy thing going on. I know and there are people who are, reaping the benefits, and there's a whole heap of people being left behind, and those rising energy bills, like you were talking about before. There's so many people. It sort of shows, I think, people are earning a lot of money out of it, that there's no security there, is there?
No, definitely.
You can just, lose a job at any moment, and Yeah, I mean, I just think that's not the way to kind of be building our country, is it? I mean, you know, how unstable is that? Yeah, we need to plan for beyond the resources boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those families who are earning the big bucks through mining, and some of them have overreached themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big.
Yeah, it is. And I see it with some of the kids that come to workshops because it's filtering down to schools and that. One school we asked one girl, "Are you okay?" And she said, "No, Dad thinks we're going to be bankrupt." And I'm going, "Okay, do you just want to sit down?" And she just had a little cry session and just talk about it.
Oh yeah. And especially these young guys with lots of money, they're buying the boats and the big, you know, all the toys, but they're not realising they're going into massive amounts of debt with no real assets behind them. So when that ride finishes, you end up with a lot of debt. and the overreaching on mortgages and again, that in WA it's held the house prices quite high. But certainly, if they're not in those type of jobs where you're earning those enormous salaries, what's going to happen to house prices eventually?
That's what like Nicole was saying to me, that once you got like this massive house, like, you know, when you start working at the mining industry, like, you know, set limits saying like, okay, I'm going to just work here 5 years.
That's right.
And then I'm going to be out. But then once you have this house to manage, you know, the expensive stuff, then you can never ever get out, you know.
One family in Cairns is quite funny. Well, not really, but the wife was actually quite depressed in a way because she said, we're now stuck in this lifestyle of FIFO. We went over to her house to do a photo shoot with the media and it's this sprawling, massive house. But the biggest problem in their marriage was he bought Lego. He spent all his money on this specialised Lego. And that was because he could. So she said this whole conversation about this Lego, but that's the thing, you can indulge these things, but they all but they had everything. His house was just amazing. So they were, again, he had 4 jobs as well as his FIFO job. He had 4 everything in town just to sustain this lifestyle, and his family weren't happy. So in fact I'm not sure if they even lasted. So it's that's a big aspect of it.
Australia's been built on the back of people coming from other countries to work here. But now, depending on whether you're like skilled or not skilled, or you might at the end of your contract have to leave. And whereas we've always given citizenship to workers who've come over for the big projects, like Italians to build the big railway. I don't know. I'm not very good with history. I know. But a lot of workers come in these 457 visas. If you're educated and you're skilled, then you're going to get a good deal. Probably you'll be able to negotiate another job. But if you're an unskilled worker, you might end up, having the boss take back some of your work, like your wages at the end of the week.
Because they sponsor you. If they have sponsorship, they're out of here.
So immigration is such a big deal here, tied to because we're so isolated. Our workforce comes in. But so, how the workers, like how did it get to this point with the subcontracting? There's never any strikes or never any.
If you make strikes, you're out of a job. And everyone, is probably with a different boss. So people are pretty fragmented. So it's not that there's one subcontractor. There are many subcontractors. each employing different, group.
It's always been that was for 50 years or.
I think, as far as I learned from books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So technical, and then like another related tech companies, and then maybe one in regional companies, and then they have like these individual people who employ local people.
Do you see the headlines today?
Yeah, exactly.
New girls come out for a nuclear.
Yeah.
It's in the nation's best interest.
Because that's the thing, this whole climate change debate, it kind of opened the door again for the nuclear industry to say, us, we're clean, like, look at us.
How is it seen as clean?
I know.
I can't get in my head how it's clean.
Yeah.
You have an output which is dirty.
Where are you going to store it?
Yeah, in the middle of the desert.
It's a huge investment to get it out of the ground as well. Like,
That's right.
It's not that economic.
No.
And these plants, and as we see from around the world, in other countries they're shutting them down, they're decommissioning them. So we're going down the opposite.
We're not going to have them here. We'll send them to other countries and make lots of money from it. Which is,
Only you
it's really,
produce uranium and...
Yeah, but we have clean energy here, potentially. But we make maybe the uranium pays for our clean energy. I don't know. Right, that's the idea of the global responsibility. Like, we're not maybe responsible for Japan, but if we're going to start selling uranium to people, like that really changes it. We're directly responsible for how that uranium gets used.
But I don't know if you guys have heard about one of the proposed places to dump nuclear waste is Makati in the Northern Territory, which is an indigenous community, and I think it's exactly what you're talking about. It's about, well, let's just put this waste, chuck it out in the desert somewhere. Like, actually, no, this is a community. People have lived here for, hundreds of years. But it's out of sight, out of mind, I think, for a lot of this stuff. So,
I think enough people are aware, like, where are you going to put that waste? And that's something held off the nuclear debate.
Exactly.
And that's where, I think we are educated enough to say, that's where we've seen what's happened around the world. We've said, no, there is a waste issue. And when the government's just shove it out in the desert, we said, no, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
So there's no way they can solve that easily, which is probably held off.
Like in WA, our Premier came out and said that with this, like you were talking about the gas hub up at James Price Point, like they were consulting, but he said, basically said, like, no matter the outcome of consultation, like, this is going ahead. So it's this we'll ask you if you want it. But if you don't, exactly. So I think
that was a bit of a gap, though. You probably shouldn't have said that.
That's it. But I think it's an insight into how these decisions are really made, isn't it?
Yeah. Because that's what I've observed when, if you present a serious idea in community, who would otherwise not get the opportunity to really be invited to comment, you don't get the populist reaction. Like, people really think about it. If you present it in a forum that is empowering, but they just don't get invited. That's what I think is really interesting about this project for me, is that the idea of a conference and that expert idea, like if it's just, you watch television and you hear the soundbite and you react to that, it's not the same as being invited into a conversation where you're put on the spot and you have to actually say what you think and you consider it. Like, people, when they're given that, like, then when they're raised to that level and they're given an opportunity to speak in an environment that validates what they're saying, or makes them feel important in that conversation, then they'll think about it that bit more than just the reception of the soundbite. Like, that's that's what I think anyway. Well, I've seen it. I feel like I've seen it happen in various instances, probably on a smaller scale. But how do you make that big? I don't know.
Like you said, with the nuclear power plants, some people are subcontractors. I mean, it's hard for subcontractors over here as well to strike, because it's such an insecure form of work. Like, a lot of the time you might be on contract, or you know, it's quite vulnerable. So I think, you know, that's part of the reason. Like, and people who are concerned about feeding their family and paying the rent and all that kind of stuff are really, of course, a bit scared to jeopardise that. So that, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the puzzle, but it's you know, got to be a multitude of reasons, I'd say. But yeah, and to also think to stand up, you've got to have hope that something will come of your actions. And I do wonder whether people think they can actually change anything. You know, people in Australia or people in Japan, I think it's all over the world, where I think people kind of go, well, this is it, isn't it? Like, can we really, you know, can we really change things? I just wonder. I mean, I don't know if any of you've been following the Occupy Wall Street movement and that kind of thing. I mean, I think that that's something really unique in that, like, it's sort of the first time in my lifetime anyway that people have kind of gone, there's something really wrong with this world and we can do something about it, and let's sort of sit down and talk about what a new world might look like. And I think that's kind of really special, and I think that's sort of part of rebuilding that kind of thing about workers standing up, or you know, people in the community, you know, standing up for, you know,
right, not only for like specific right, specific like share of money, or
because I think like what we've been talking about tonight, I think kind of shows that it's all interconnected, isn't it? Like whether we're talking about Indigenous rights or workers' rights or the environment or, you know, all this sort of stuff, it's all interconnected. So I think there's something seriously wrong with all of it actually at the moment. But yeah, so I don't really know the answer, but I do like what I'm seeing with this Occupy movement, and you know, I just hope that kind of thing continues, because it's people kind of waking up and going, things aren't working out the way they should be, you know.